Hi, this is Tresta Neil with Call to Learn, and today we have Hannah Stoddard with us. And thank you for coming. I appreciate you coming.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Tresta. I really appreciate it.
So we're going to ask her story. She was a homeschool child since you were young, and she's been homeschooled all of her life. She's now an adult, and we're going to talk to her about how she got started in homeschooling and why she's doing it and if she liked it. All right, so Hannah, how did you get started in homeschooling? Did you start in public school?
I started, it was something of a private charter kind of a program that was associated with my dad's work. My dad did software, so I did that for kindergarten, and that was a very interesting experience, learning. And when I finished that school year, then my dad said, we're going to do homeschool. And my poor mom, bless her heart, scared, you know, just I'm sure like almost a lot of homeschool moms that I've talked to and consulted with, and so she's scared, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Young mom, I'm the oldest of 10, so I was the guinea pig to start out with. So, but it was an amazing experience. So I think we did something a little different each year. We moved a lot with my dad's work, but always growing up, my dad had, ever since he was about 11 years old, he started studying Joseph Smith and studying the scriptures intensely.
Really?
Some Sundays he'd go in for 8 hours a day and just study. So he
specifically only Joseph Smith, or just
and
everything
all the presidents of the church. So like Joseph Fielding Smith's Doctrines of Salvation, Mormon Doctrine, Spencer W. Kimball, just studying as much as he could.
Awesome.
And so he drew from that a lot of principles where he was thinking. He's an out-of-the-box thinker, so he was like, how are we going to homeschool our kids or home educate them?
Yeah.
What are we going to do, and how can we do this right? And so from that, we drew out some principles that we practice in our life, and I really feel so grateful for all of the principles that came through the restoration and came through the scriptures and could be found. And so when we were young, one thing that my dad always felt was important was that everything was practical. So for English or for language arts or reading, he had us writing plays about family history stories.
Wow.
And so we could learn how to write the plays. He'd have us send it off to, I did one and I sent it off to my uncles to get critiqued and analyzed. I think I was about 10 at that time.
Wow.
And then practice acting. How are we going to do this? And then he was a software developer. So he said, you can learn all the math principles doing software. So he was like, I'm going to have my kids learn software, and then they'll have a marketable skill when they're in their early teens and be learning their math all at the same time. So that kind of efficient kind of a thinker.
Yeah.
When
efficient. I love that word that you use, the efficient thinker, but also way ahead of his time.
Yeah. And realizing
so
and just, and feeling that freedom of being able to see, you know, what am I going to do? And I think that was, for some that I've talked to, and I can remember being young and being like, is this going to work? Like, am I going to like turn out strange or unequipped to deal with the real world?
All my other friends are not doing this.
and so that, what really helped with that was going to the Lord in prayer and praying and saying, you know, what am I supposed to be doing? What do I need to know so that when I'm 18 years old, that I'm ready for the real world and ready to do some good? And so we did everything as a family all together. So when I was about 13 years old.
Tell us about the answer to your prayer. Did you receive the right answer?
Yes. Okay.
Obviously.
So let me tell you that story.
Okay.
And then I'll go back. So when I was about 12 years old, let me start back just even a little bit more. So when I was 11, then my dad, his software company, we lived in Colorado, and they shipped the company over to India. And our family was not moving to India. So so he's now looking for new employment. And the situation, basically, he was asking kind of, what should I do? Yeah. What does the Lord want me to do now? Do I just go get another job? And the Lord said, do video. Wow. And my dad is sitting there going, I've never touched a camera pretty much in my life, besides, you know, at the zoo, like taking a few pictures of those old cameras that you take into Walmart to get developed, and, you know, not the digital age before then. So my dad's like, how in the world am I supposed to do video? Yeah. So he was studying out, do I have to go to film school? And if I do, what film school? And they're all so trashy. He was like, I really don't want to sell my soul to do video. How do I do this? And so he started finding online tutorials and doing them at home. I can remember coming home from the park, and he'd be in there in our family room studying, and he's like, this is how you do J cuts and L cuts, which if you've done video, then you're going to be understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then it's something else that my dad felt was important is that anything that the Lord asked him to do was a family a family business, a family project, a family mission, a ministry. And so I was the oldest, and so he would have myself and my brother and my sister, and he'd be like, I want you guys to learn this too. Here, let me sign you up on a computer and get you your account. You learn how to use Photoshop. You learn how to use Premiere Pro. We were using the Adobe suite. And that was very fun as a child to think, wow, I'm going to do adult things, you know.
That must have been, yeah.
But then my dad would bring in the point of saying, we're doing this to do good. We're doing this to serve other people. So we did the first documentary in 2007, Creation and Evolution, A Witness of Prophets. So that was the first film that finished, and that was such an exciting day when we brought the big box of DVDs home from the DVD replicators, and we're like, this is real, and then we're thinking, now we got to set up the website. Okay, zionvision.com. Let's figure out how to do the website, and my dad would have us doing that with him, helping a lot.
Very cool.
And so then we continued on to do videos. We're now on our 8th or 9th video documentary, and the fun thing is my dad would always stress excellence. He was like, we're going to do a good job. I want this to be just as good as Hollywood. And so, and by God's grace, it's not anything to do with us. That's one thing that if anyone's feeling scared, you know, getting into homeschooling and they're like, I don't know. Yes, you don't know how to do that. You don't know how to homeschool. Yes, we're right there with you. That's where God comes in, and he makes more of you than you could ever do on your own. Awesome. So feeling that empowerment and realizing, you know, you can do this with God's help. You can build the ship. I love the story of Nephi building the ship. You can do it. But awesome. So as we began working on these different videos and websites, and it turned into now there's about 10 to 11 different websites that the Joseph Smith Foundation runs. The Joseph Smith Foundation is our family organization. So there's about 10 to 11 different websites. We have websites on faith crisis, trying to help people that are going through faith crisis with church history. We have education resources. We have scholarly articles. And so that's kind of my job, is kind of managing that, making sure things are flowing. And then we do the documentaries. But one important experience, you were asking the story. Did I get the answer to my prayer? So when I was about 15 years old, I remember 15 being like best year of my life, like up to that point, because that was when I finally started clicking that I had a cause. God wanted me to do this, and I was on fire. And but I remember there were some people that were kind of critical of our family and being like, why are you doing this? And this is, you know, just different things. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to some people
if you're in
like,
the homeschooling world, for sure.
You're kind of weird. Like, what are you doing? And specifically doing this such project based and trying to do these videos, and people were saying like, can they really do that? And you know, kids are listening, I think, a lot more than we think. And so I remember one night I got down on my knees and I prayed, and I said, God, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, I want to know for myself, because my dad definitely believes that this is what God wants, but are you guiding our family? Like, are you the one behind this?
That's such a great insight. Wow.
And I got the answer that I was looking through, and I knew without a shadow of the Lord was like, yes, you are in the right place. Awesome. This is your cause, and that gave such confidence and such peace to be able to know, you know, the Lord is watching, and the Lord is involved. And I think if every child can have that experience, then it does far more than any kind of self-esteem program you can imagine. It's the best.
You reminded me of, or earlier you said it was like the Lehi and Nephi kind of thing. Is my dad okay? Is he just a dreamer?
Yeah. And that's what I remember being 16, and I think I was sitting outside the UVU testing center because I was going to start some UVU courses, and so and I'm reading the Book of Mormon, and I was reading the story of Nephi, and I was like, this is the best story for teenagers that exists. Like, this is awesome. But, yeah, definitely that kind of an experience. And so I think that was some of the key principles. We did everything as a family, and then it was very project-based, project-oriented. And my dad would also, we would, when we were doing family scriptures or things, he would say, don't get into this idea of one day I'll do my mission, you know, when I'm grown up, like when I'm 18, and right now I'm studying so that I'll be ready then. Because my dad would list out, and he would be like, when did Joseph Smith start his mission? When he was 14. When did Mormon get, Amaron come to Mormon and say, I'm perceiving you're a sober child. You're going to take these with you. He was 10.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I was not that kind of 10-year-old. These kinds of stories. I think Joseph F. Smith, he was 15 years old when he got called on a mission to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Wow. And he heads over there to Hawaii, opens up that country for the gospel. George A. Smith is cousin, so we come through the Smith line. So these were kind of our family family members too. But George A. Smith, he was 17, I believe, and he was called to the first quorum of the 70. So my dad would say, you can do things now.
Yeah.
And the two main principles is acting now, but that also God works through humble and pure people. So my dad would stress that, and he would ask us, do you really know that God lives? Do you, are you for yourself? Not just relying on me or relying on mom or relying on people around you. You get that connection, for yourself. So all of these things working together were really helpful. So then when I was about 14, 15, we started a web business, which was very good too. It's all learning. I don't want to make this sound like it was a bed of roses. It was my poor parents. Patience with Job, being able to, and be like, okay, you're going to do a business, and we learned a lot. Okay, how do you work with a client? When you're meeting with a client, you've got to take good notes and what does the client need, and being able to work with them and deliver what you were asked to do. And so it was and then if you don't know how to do something, learning how to study it, and learning how to use the internet, and being able to, but at the same time, we felt like we were doing things now. We were not just sitting filling out worksheets that are like, oh, mom thinks I have to do this so I can be educated, like whatever that means, or so I can get a job, and we felt like we were contributing because we knew we're working on these documentaries that are going to help change people's lives. So when I was 14, I did my first research assistant project, and that was that we were the Joseph Smith Foundation was going to compile, and at that time it was under the name Brigham Young Academy. And then it eventually became the Joseph Smith Foundation. But we were going to compile every single known statement by a president of the church on science, Adam, the fall, creation, everything, and put it in one place so that people could access it online. And so we spent several months. We went through the entire Journal of Discourses. We went through every statement from President Harold B. Lee and Howard W. Hunter and because we wanted everything. It was going to be unbiased. We're not going to cut anything out. It's going to be comprehensive. And we finished compiling over 500 pages of statements.
Wow.
And that's available now on the Joseph Smith Foundation website. But that was a really good learning experience too. And my dad would sit us down and we would watch debates on intelligent design between Richard Dawkins and some kind of and we'd stop and think about it. My dad wanted us to know what's going on in the world, what are the different viewpoints, and what's truth. And that taught us so much about speaking and debating. And so then it came the time, when we were about 16, we'd have tables at different conferences. So my dad has us helping set up the table, learning how to run the business, and then learning how are you going to explain this to people when people have questions, you know, being able to work with different kinds of personalities when you're at booths or expos, you know, I'm sure, you know, and you're learning. Sometimes you'd have these older gentlemen that just wanted to sit down and tell you their whole life story. And it might not have anything to do with anything you're talking about. I'm just learning how to be courteous and being able to and help them feel appreciated and be a light. And so many things I think you learn in the moment. You learn by doing. Yeah. And one analogy that my dad would share with us, which has always stuck with me, is, you know, in our culture today, we go to school so we can go to the next level of school so that we can eventually do something, right? How does the Lord do it? So he takes a bishop, right? He takes a man, he calls him as a bishop, and then he sends him off to bishop school for 5 years to get his degree, right? Because, let's face it, being a bishop is hard. And he gets them all trained, then he comes back with his little certificate, a piece of paper that says he's worth something, and then he goes in there to be the bishop, right? We wish.
Exactly how it works.
I bet a lot of men wish.
I'm sure they do.
But no, that's not what the Lord does. He calls this often a man that's never been a bishop before, and day one he's in there trying to give marriage counsel to a marriage that's falling apart, or help a youth that's struggling with their testimony, or figure out how to work with a Relief Society president and launch out problems, and you're right there in the moment, right? And you've never been there before, and you learn by doing. But that's how the Lord works. You know, he calls us, and then in the process, as we're humble and we rely on him, then he teaches us, and you learn so much more. You learn so much more than you could ever out of a book. And just memorizing rules. So that was something my dad was like, I don't want them to wait till they're 18, 19, 20 to learn this. I want them to learn this from day one as you're going through.
Yeah, your father is amazing.
He is amazing. I love it. But it was amazing to and be able to see the fruits. And so I think that was one of the most important things of no waste. So now he was like, we don't have time to waste. He was like, there are people out there suffering. So one thing that I love, and I still do it today, whenever I need that kind of uplift and help me home back in, why am I doing what I'm doing? We would watch 2 motion pictures on the life of Mother Teresa. They're so good. There's one that's Mother Teresa in the Name of God's Poor, and then another that's just Mother Teresa. They're really amazing. I think every family should watch them as a family. But we would watch those. I've probably seen it 10 or more times. And my parents would pause it all the way through. My parents are infamous in a good way. We never watch a movie all the way through. It's always paused every...
Let's stop and discuss.
I can remember being, awesome. Probably 6 or 7, and we just finished watching Christmas Carol. We're all sitting around. I think we were having cobbler or something. And my dad was like, so what did you learn from the movie? And I was like, what did I learn? It was, but it really got me thinking, you know?
This is just a casual movie.
But no, my dad was like, no, like this is, think about what you're learning and analyze it. And so whenever we would be watching this movie on Mother Teresa, my dad he'd pause it and he'd say, look at all those people that are suffering. Why did she leave this wonderful convent that she worked in? Because if people don't know the story, she was in this convent teaching school, and then she left it all to go work in the slums of Calcutta. And it shows it decently well in the movie, you know, people that were diseased with leprosy that no one else would touch. They were just leaving them to die in the streets, and she would go and she'd pick them up in her arms and she would carry them to help them. And he'd say, what would give her the strength to do that? How could she do that? Why would she do that? She's crazy. Well, who would do that? Their right mind would do that. In the world. And so we discussed that as a family. Where does true happiness come from? And then he would say, there's people that are suffering like this right now. I remember when there was a famine going on in Africa, and my parents were talking about, they were like, there's this many children that are dying. That's just physical. Then they would say, there's even more that are dying spiritually right around you, in your ward, in your neighborhood. And they would say, God put you in a family where you have access to the scriptures. You have access to all of the words of presence of the church. They're sitting on the shelves. Your parents are begging you to read them. They're begging you to read them. You have it so well. You have a responsibility to now go out and help those people who are not so fortunate as you. You cannot waste your life. You have to, when you get to the other side, you want people to come up to you and say, thank you. That changed my life. I'm a different person now. And I've thought about that so many times. I've thought, when I get to the other side, I don't want anyone to come up and say, Hannah, you knew, and you were quiet. You were sitting there and we were all discussing something and you knew the answer to the problem and you were quiet because you didn't want to be weird. Or you were quiet just because you wanted to do something you wanted to do, you knew. Why did you not tell me, And I was like, I don't want anyone to say that. I want the opposite. To be true, I want my life to count for eternity. And that was a focus of our education. So it was, don't stress about which curriculum you're using. Don't stress about, just, is your family on a mission for God? And are you producing things today, right now? And every member can help. That was another family rule, is that Joseph Fielding Smith in Doctrines of Salvation, he said it was a law of heaven that God never does anything for us that we can do for ourselves. So my dad puts that into practical implementation at home. So we've got the little 5-year-old, and my dad's like, you know how to do the floor. So I'm not going to do the floor for you. Mom's not going to do your floor. You can do the floor. And Mom's not going to be in there cooking meals when she shouldn't be. My mom still sneaks in there a couple times. No, but I can remember when I was 11 or 12, and my dad was like, Hannah, you're going to take over cooking all the meals now.
Wow.
Because you can do that. God never does anything for us that we can do for ourselves. But
one of those family statements.
Yes. I didn't know it came from Doctrines of Salvation until years later. I was reading. I'm like, funny. Oh, it's not just my dad. Yes, I was quoting a president of the church.
That's funny.
But what made that is that we always knew that we were contributing. I think that sometimes children can feel like they're a drain on the family. I remember the first time I went to Relief Society. And I was sitting there in the back, and some women started ragging on their teenagers. They were such a drain, and then they started ragging on their husbands. And I remember sitting there in shock, because I'd always grown up in a home where children are an asset and they're valuable, and you guys can help us. I can help my dad when I'm 11 and 12. I don't know how much I was actually helping, but hopefully a little bit.
You felt needed, though. Yes. That's the important part.
And I felt needed by my parents, and I felt needed by the world, and I felt needed by God, that God had a work for me to do. However much little I could do, even in the little things, cleaning the bathroom, they'd say, when you're cleaning the bathroom, you're serving God. When you're cooking the meals, you're serving God. When you're babysitting, you're serving God just as much as any CEO out there is, if you're where the Lord wants you to be. Wow. And that really helped. Kids love to help. They love to do things. And to them, when they first can unload the dishwasher, they think that is the most awesome thing in the world.
They do. Yeah.
And right when it's starting to rub off is right when they get old enough that they're ready for the next job. You're like, great, you can now start cooking. We'll have brother number 2, number 3 come up and start doing it, And then when everyone feels like they're contributing, they feel like, we're working on a project together, and we all put in effort and made this happen. And it adds meaning and purpose to life, which I feel is very important.
It's awesome. Incredible.
So
other things that your father taught you, or your mother, that you did as a family?
That's a good question. Well, one thing they taught us was the importance of skills. I think that's very important. So I was always a reader, and I always enjoyed music and those types of things, but my dad would push us to be well balanced. Or he would say, you need to learn some software, learn some video, learn gardening, and again, he was always thinking, how can we do this? How can I teach my kids in a way that's going to help other people at the same time? Wow. So when we have an 11.5 acre down in Sanpete, and so you'd think, oh, families learning to become self-reliant, learning skills, they'll just go down there and do that. Not my dad. So he's like, we're going to start a business. He's like, we're going to start a business called Highland Cathedral Estate. What we're going to do is we're going to import all the different kinds of perennials and plants that can grow in our climate, and we're going to grow them and build a place where families can come, disconnect from their phones, disconnect from the internet, and come into nature and spend a weekend, like a family retreat. And they can walk through and they can see goats and help milk goats and feed chickens and pick the berries and see, oh, this is what works, and get inspired to go home and start their own little self-reliant project, whether they have a half an acre or an acre or whatever they have. And then he's thinking, all of these foods are so healthy for people. Like, let's do baskets that we can take all through Utah County and deliver to people's doors. Which then added even more meaning, because you felt like, I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this that it can help someone else. Yeah. Might take a couple years. We're still working on it. But, be able to add that kind of purpose and meaning again.
Yeah. How incredible. So how do you do it all? Like, you're farming, you're doing barns and chickens and dogs, and now you have software, and you're doing documentaries, and how have you?
I would say,
is there a system in place that you can get it all done?
I would say the number one thing is help from the Lord. Like, at the end of the day, it is impossible. And I can remember when we first started doing documentaries, I think 17, 18, 19, when a couple more of ours came out, and people would come, they're like, oh, I can't believe you can do that. You guys are just so lucky, kind of born with that gift, And we were always like,
You know how many years are behind this?
We'd always laugh when would always, because we'd say, trust me, if you knew the health challenges, almost every single person in our family, we everything from autism to cancer to different kinds of autoimmune disease to this day. Crazy stories going on all at the same time. We are like a normal average family. We've got all different personalities. We've got we've got kids that have Laman and Lemuel moments and kids that have Nephi moments. Like we're real.
Yeah.
But when you get down on your knees and you pray and the Lord gives you answers. This is how to do this. This is how to do that. And like you said, just trying to be efficient and always thinking, what's the best thing we can do right now?
Yeah. Awesome. That's fantastic. So Hannah, could you give us some specific examples of how you've done projects in your family?
That's a really good question. Very good question. So we started initially doing video, and then my dad had this vision of, what if we had an online website that was completely free for homeschool families, that they could find. He was always thinking, how do we do better? He's always thinking that way. So Wikipedia, right, is where a lot of people are turning for their information. So he was thinking, we need an Inspira wiki. It's all based on providential history instead of just meaningless dates and facts or relying on historians. Let's have miracles. He was like, let's have a fascinating but little known section. So how do we do that? Well, first thing, you're going to have to figure out how to do a website. So he was like, hey, Hannah, James, Leah, go figure out how to do a website and report back. Yeah. And he would give us a lot of help. We'd come back with our idea, and my dad's like, okay, well, let's think this out. I still have some of the initial blueprint plans that we do, all sitting on the couch together as a family. Cool. And I can remember those moments of, when inspiration comes in, you can feel the Lord stepping in and opening up your mind of, oh, here's how it should be done, or here's how you can do it effectively. And those moments of feeling and realizing, wow, like the Lord can give you inspiration, realizing, making the gospel very real. So instead of this thing, oh, I do that on Sunday and then I have my real life. You're like, no, the two are inseparable.
Oh, amen. Thank you for making
so
that
important,
statement.
isn't it?
It really is.
They
are inseparable, and they really should be done together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we did the website, and then now we got to put stories out there. So we had grown up reading Vicki Joe Anderson's book, The Other Eminent Men of Wilford Woodruff. So my dad said, let's contact Vicki Joe Anderson and see if we can get permission to put that on our website.
Very cool.
And so we got a caller. She came to our home, and we filmed and interviewed her, and it was a lot of fun because, and then she had lost her digital copy. So we only had the book. So my sister, bless her heart, typed the entire book by hand. That was a couple-month project. She was, she was early teens at best. I forget her exact age. But I remember that a couple months later, someone contacted us through the website because we had put out the story of a man that was his ancestor. And he said, I never knew anything good about him. I always heard only negative things, kind of like think of a founding father or something, and you only hear all the dirt.
The negative right now, yes.
and Vicki Joe Anderson had done a good job actually going to the primary sources and pulling out the miracles. And then my sister typed this in and posted it on InspiraWiki. And he said, thank you so much for doing this. This just changed my life. I just learned so much about my ancestor. And he lived in Germany. Wow. That was a fun day in our family. Getting an email from Germany. First of many emails from people that you never heard about. And, that was I'd often call these projects purification projects. And I would call them that because, especially the documentaries that we did. So we did Creation, Evolution, Witness, Prophets. And then in 2013, we did For Our Day, Covenant on the Land, which talks about the Book of Mormon and how it's a parallel for our day. And it goes into the Pilgrims and the Puritans and early foundations. We did 4 Day Divinely Sanctioned Governments, which is all about the Constitution. And see, I didn't even know why the Constitution mattered that much. Forgive me, any lovers of liberty. Forgive me. I was 17, 16. But I just didn't, because I thought, well, people going up and picketing at the Capitol, that just seems really boring. Like, I think I want to do music or drama or help families, or I was passionate about education myself, but then it was working on that project of the Constitution and the principles of liberty in the Book of Mormon that I went from somewhat apathy to bleeding red, white, and blue, and crying when the Star-Spangled Banner plays, and loving the Constitution, and being like, I want to do Constitution stuff the rest of my life. And and that came from studying the scriptures and applying them in real life. So not just reading them in my bedroom for myself, but actually doing something that was going to help somebody else. And in that process, I became converted myself.
Wow.
With missionary work, right? In the home. And then we did a documentary on statesmen and symbols, Prelude to the Restoration. I did that one before I went through the temple.
No way.
Which was very fun to do a project like that, all on temple symbolism and the architecture on the outside, and how they found those same symbols among the early Christians and in China. And what testimony builders, right? Because as you're working on this project, and so many miracles. I'll tell you one story. So when I was 16, almost 17, when we were doing the 4-a-day covenant on the land, that Book of Mormon video that came out in 2013. And I was still a kid, and I was mostly consecrated, but there were some times I was not quite as focused as I should have been. And meaning that when the Lord asks you to do something, I really believe it's important you put your whole heart and soul to make it happen, you know, and I was still on the fence, you know, and I still had things that I wanted to do with my life too. I wanted to write stories, and just not quite, a little slothful. And God really convicted my heart about that. And I could tell that he was not happy with me. And it came to a point where I remember it was late at night, and I was just praying and praying for forgiveness, because I knew that God had asked me to do this. I knew it was what he wanted me to do. I knew it was going to help other people. And I felt that I was failing. And I was failing because of my own weakness. I'm human, and I have weaknesses, and I'm not strong enough on my own. And I realized I'm not going to be strong enough on my own. And I didn't know what to do. And it was that moment of almost a desperation, and I was just praying. I was like, God, I am messing my life up. Nothing serious, like like serious, like immorality or not at all. But just that thing of, I wanted to be consecrated. I wanted to be like a Mormon or a Moroni or a Mary Fielding Smith or an Esther. That was what I wanted to achieve, and I was failing that. And I knew, and I couldn't do it on my own. And so I prayed, and I said, God, take my life. Please, you take over. You take control. I want to, Hannah Stoddard's life is done. I want it dead, buried. Give me a new name. And that's when kind of the identity of being a Christian really took on a new meaning, because I was like, it's not my life anymore. I'm taking his name upon me. And I promised him, I was like, if we can get this project done, I swear for the rest of my life I'll be consecrated. and we got the project done. And so when the next video came around, a couple months later, I was like, I'm going to do this right. Like, I am going to work hard. So a couple months before it was supposed to be done, we were on schedule. Everything's going great. And I remember I was working in our family garden. So many good things happen while you're working in nature. Nature is amazing. But I remember I was out there, and long story short, I just felt an impression, like the Lord said, that he recognized my sacrifices. He knew how I had been trying, and that he would make sure the difference was made up, and that we would finish this next video. Which didn't mean a whole lot to me then, because I thought, well, sure, yeah, we're on schedule, everything's going great. Okay, a couple months later, everything is going wrong. And I mean everything. Got to the point where everyone on the project, we were like, there's no way we're going to do this. Like, there's no way we can have it done by the deadline. Just forget about it. We'll just, have to call up and say, we're not going to have it done, and it will be late. And I remember sitting in our office, and my mind went back a couple months before to that experience when I was working in the garden, and I knew I had done what the Lord asked me to do. And so I had confidence the Lord was going to fulfill his promise. And I knew we're going to get this done, even if it seems absolutely impossible by all. And we got the project done. And that project, even today, just actually a couple months ago, I found somebody said, I had a life-changing experience with that video, and lots of different stories. And I always go back to, it pays to do what the Lord wants you to do. And you can be 16, 17, you can't do it on your own. Yes, you're right. I couldn't do it on my own. But with the Lord behind you, you can do absolutely anything he asks you to do. And it makes a difference. I remember one video we did, and I had to choose between going on a trip back to the UN, which was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
I was like, that would be amazing. I think I was 19, and I was invited to participate. And but we knew with a deadline that we'd either have to finish a video, or if we wouldn't be able to finish this video if I did go back on this trip. There just wasn't enough time. And my dad kind of left it in my hands. He was like, you just decide what's the right thing to do, because it's hard to know, you know. And I remember praying, and I felt like the Lord was like, this video is more important, that you need to do, we could finish this video, which was a little bit hard, because I was like, oh man, this could be the trip of a lifetime.
What an opportunity that
is. But I knew for me that I was supposed to finish this assignment, and so I decided to finish the assignment. And that video actually ended up bringing several families into the church. And every time I go back, you're just praising God, because you're like, it's not through our own strength, on our own. And I keep thinking of the scripture where it talks about the weak and the simple things. That's how the Lord changes the earth. It's those people. That's why I call them purification projects, because you continually get pushed to your limit. And I think every homeschool family is a purification project. Every mom going through that, you are going through a purification project, and you get pushed to your limit all the time. And you get to that point where the Lord's like, humble yourself, pray, purify, and then he steps in and makes miracles happen. And it's all for our good. I'm so grateful for every trial I've ever gone through, every moment of hard work. It's almost like nothing. It's like, of course, that's more than worth it. So yes, documentaries. We did one project that was called Zion Tube, where we're again thinking, everyone's going to YouTube. There's so many good videos out there. And a lot of them are on YouTube, but YouTube is really trashy. And a lot of people, myself included, don't want to spend a whole lot of time
searching through the junk.
So we thought, what if we made a movie database where we embedded all the good movies on YouTube, other video sites, into one website called Zion Tube, where families could come and find it. So they're looking for good movies, and they can search by history, science, government. So say they're studying the Constitution for homeschool. They can say, what movies are out there? Because my dad would always say, because he would taught high school when I was little, he had read a lot of books on Gandhi, but he'd also watched a movie. And to this 20 years later, he can remember the movie, but he can't really remember the books. Movies stick in your brain. So movies are a powerful tool, good movies, to teach children. And so that was a project, just thinking, I think, just recognizing, looking for needs in the world. You know, if a family's wondering, how do we get project-based? Just look for needs. I know there was one family that shared with me that they just took a piece of paper and they just started writing out as a family needs they saw in the world, problems, things that needed to be fixed, changed to get to a Zion society. And they were not LDS, so we can do this even better with the restoration. It'll be even easier. And then they got down as a family and they prayed and asked God, which of those issues on that list do you want our family to tackle? Which one did you send our family down? You put our family together. You put all of us as siblings together. People say, oh, you can't choose your family. Yeah, but the Lord chose your family.
Yeah, for a reason, with all of the personalities. Yeah.
Right. And so saying, God, why did you send our family down here? What are we supposed to do with this? Yeah. And the Lord will answer. I can promise. I know that he will. I know from personal experience. And there is nothing in this world that's more satisfying than going to bed at night tired and exhausted, but knowing that the Lord is pleased with you.
Yeah. So much peace with that.
So much peace.
Now, there's something you mentioned earlier in this, is that they're so intertwined, the gospel and schooling, learning, academia, right? They're so entwined. Is there a way that you could teach us, how do you keep that intertwined?
That is
how did your family, how do you do it personally?
Yeah. Well, one thing, I'll say what my parents did not do, and then what we did do. Okay. So one thing that we did not do, and it would always bother me when I was older because I thought it was fake, is, okay, let me tell you a story. Okay, so I'm 13 years old.
Okay, now you've got my curiosity.
Yes. So I'm 13, I think I was 13 years old, and I was on a youth committee for our stake to kind of pick the stake youth activities for the next year. And so I'm there with youth from all over different wards in our stake. And it was interesting because they started out, they said, what kind of activities would you guys like to do this year? So they're like, oh, let's do it. We want to do a barbecue. We'd want to maybe go to a movie, the laser tag, jump on it, all these different activities. And then this, I think it was one of the leaders, they came and they said, well, we have a problem, which I don't know why this was a problem, but they said, we have a problem. The stake president has asked that every activity has to be tied some way to the gospel. And all the kids were like, oh no.
Wow.
and I think this probably just happened in this way so that I could learn. Because I'm sitting here watching, and at that age I was very shy. Most people don't guess this about me, but I was so shy. I was just always quiet. No one ever knew that I knew how to talk. Which thanks to my mom, she's the one that corrected that for me. But so I'm sitting there just watching, but I love to watch people. I still like to do that. I'm sure a lot of people do. You like to watch, and why are they doing this? And what are they thinking? So all these kids were like, oh no, we have to tie it to the gospel. And the leader was like, don't worry, I'll show you. This is easy. So just decide which activity you'd like to do. So they're like, well, we want to do some kind of, I think, a water skiing activity. He was like, so we just think, how can we tie this into the gospel? Well, like waves, like ups and downs of life and getting over trials. So he was like, so let's do this activity, and then we'll just like have a devotional at the end and talk about getting through trials. And everyone's like, oh yeah, awesome, great, okay, perfect, da 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 da. And I remember it was one of those moments where it just kind of opened up, where the Lord was trying to teach me something. And the first thing I thought was, that is so cheesy. I was like, you're not going to learn anything about trials. Like, I'm not opposed to boating at all. I love nature. But I was like, that's kind of a stretch. And then the next thing that in that moment, it was like everything opened up, and I could see that every single one of those youth in that room knew that it was a stretch too. They knew that it was fake too. And but they were just going along with it because they were like, well, we want to have some fun. Kind of we want fun. And so they were going along with it. And I remember sitting back, and I realized we are treating the gospel as if it's separate from real life. And then we're just trying to like bandage it on, like cookie cutter it, like on the the side, you know. And I think sometimes we try to do that, and it got me thinking. And I remember when I was 14, I wanted to write a book called Boring LDS Youth to Death. Because I was like, because I was learning in my personal life, I was like, the gospel is so exciting. I love reading the scriptures. But then sometimes you'd go to lessons and bless our heart, you're like, this is so boring. And I was like, it's because we're separating it from real life. And kids want something real. They want something that's going to help them when they're going through hard trials. They want something that's there, that's real. They want something that's powerful, something that's going to give them an answer when they're going through school and they're trying to decide what career. They want something that can, science, sink their teeth into, physical, something they can touch. And when we separate the gospel, like, oh, it's just something fluffy on the side that gives you warm and fuzzies, they're like, okay, that's nice, And so it really got me thinking. And I think sometimes it's easy to fall into that with education, where we're thinking, okay, we have this secular textbook, how do we bring the gospel into this? Okay, let's read a secular lesson, and then tie in quickly at the end with a 5-minute, and thus we see a gospel principle. And what you're laughing. and without realizing, no, the academic concept is the gospel principle. They're the same thing. The content is the message. Awesome. Nature testifies of Jesus Christ. It's not like, oh, there's nature, and then we try to tie Christ into it. They're the same thing. And if you can do that with music, with media, with history, with science, and recognizing all of this is simply God's laws, this is God's world, and you're learning how, and you're trying to, I think sometimes I see it as two things. You're trying to, as a parent, help your child love the Lord with all of their heart, might, mind, and soul, right? Become converted themselves. And then also we've been commissioned in Scripture to go out and make disciples of all nations. Go ye into the world and teach all nations. That's everyone. That's Japan and China. And so, when we were growing up, my dad that's how we would learn about different cultures. We would talk about Islam. What do they believe, so that we can do missionary work? Awesome. What do they believe in their Chinese history that actually testifies that the Bible is true? In China, they say the two founders of China came out after the world was destroyed by a flood. go look at those tapestries of Fushianiwa.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see some very interesting symbolism there
Wow.
that ties into the restoration and even to our temples. And so recognizing and learning so that when you're, we've just recently been working on a project on Japan and Israel and Japan. And so I've been studying the Shinto religion and their history and their culture and sumo wrestling. And now I could sit down with someone who is from Japan and we could have an amazing, uplifting discussion about, where did your religion come from? Your culture is what's beautiful and amazing, and how it has roots back to Israel, I believe. And that of course came because we were working on a documentary that we wanted to give to people to serve. And from there, the Lord leads you to learn, So
Awesome.
if parents are worried, is my child going to learn math? They're going to learn science. They're going to learn English. Recognizing that when you're working in the real world on a project from 10, 11, 12 years old, all of those things come into play. Yeah. If you're going to write a book or do a video or do some kind of a presentation, you're going to be learning how to speak. You're going to be learning how to research. And then you're going to be learning how to do science. And because you got to learn how to defend creation. You're going to have to learn how to defend the scriptures and not just go, I believe it because the scriptures say it. Okay. Paul says, be ready always to have an answer for the hope. So if someone asks you, why do you do what you do? Why will you not listen to this music? You can explain, well, this is what the presidents of the church taught and the kind of music we should be listening to. And scientifically, let me explain to you why music testifies that the presidents of the church are right, and understanding it. And then it can really become, I think, a missionary tool, just thinking of yourself as a missionary with a mission from God as a family. And then your education is just your tool to accomplish that mission right now. Yeah.
So incredible. So with all of your experiences now that tell me how old you are.
I'm 23.
23. So how do you see your future? What do you visualize for your future?
Well, so right now I've kind of just to date what I've done. So I've done about 8 to 9 different documentaries. We're working on our 8th and 9th right now. I've worked as a high school teacher. I've worked as a research assistant. I've done web software and really kind of with all of my experiences, what I really have a passion for is building Zion and for defending the restoration, defending Joseph Smith's character and helping people see that the answers to all of the tough questions in life can be found in the scriptures and in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, when I was growing up, I might have told you, I want to do things on family and education, or then one phase of my life, Constitution, or then one phase of my life, Joseph Smith. And honestly, I can say everything. I just have a passion for gardening and for learning how to take care of animals. And I want to learn midwifery, and I want to learn how to heal and how to give education so that when mothers are struggling, I can be there to help them. I have time being single still. I have time that I can go and help other people. And there's so many people that need help. So kind of what I see down the road is just continually receiving inspiration from the Lord on what to do. And there are so many exciting things that can possibly be done.
I bet you see a lot more now with you being raised as you were than you ever did.
And it seems like almost every week the Lord shows you another piece and you're like, wow, there's even more. So I think the number one passion is just help people wherever we can. And and I think every family does have their own mission, and our family kind of feels like we have a little piece in almost all the little pies of just trying to help in a lot of different areas. And which
one of the people I interviewed called it an omniologist.
Nice, I like it.
A study of everything.
I love that. I love that because that's who God is, right? I love thinking He's the perfect musician. He's the perfect scientist. He's the perfect, and learning how to build this kingdom where it's beautiful. And I think that's at the end of my life. I had an experience. I think it was about 1.5 years ago. I love to run. That's one of my passions. Love running. And so I remember one day I was running, and the thought came to my mind, no more tears. And the millennial promise that the Lord made that in the future He's going to wipe away all tears. And that hit me because I'd been thinking a lot about so many people that were suffering. There were so many. I have so many friends that were either going through depression or mothers that were frustrated or having a child that was going astray, someone losing their testimony. I just see so many tears in the world. I see Christians in North Korea being persecuted. I see freedom being lost. I see people suffering from health, cancer and other, just so many tears. And I just felt like this call, work until there's no more tears. Go out in the world and try to solve these problems. And I'm only one person. I'm not going to do everything. I'm not going to try to do everything, but I'm going to do everything that I can. And I know that if every person just does everything that they can, that when they look back at their life, they'll realize the Lord did more with their life than they ever dreamed possible.
It's true. Hannah, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing us with your story.
Tresta.
I have learned a lot. Yeah, as a mom, has already raised most of her children thinking, man, I could have done this better.
What makes you feel better? We have those moments almost all the time, daily.
Yeah. But it's inspiring, and I really admire your parents. It's really great, and I admire you for just taking the reins and for getting a testimony that you did, and for sharing it with me today.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.